Hey everyone, it's Rob with Four Songs. You know what's fun about this podcast? It's taken me on some pretty incredible journeys, and sometimes it's actually taken me back in time a bit. And this one is an example of that, and let me tell you a little bit why. So, 20 some years ago, my friend Alex and I were on a road trip to Nashville, and this is before I was married, so we were doing a bachelor night, well, a week, I guess is a better way to put it. And we were just going to different bars, going to different clubs. And that's the first time I saw Scott Miller. My buddy who's been on this podcast a couple of times was on this trip to Nashville. So it was memorable for a number of reasons. But on one of our nights downtown, and if you've been to downtown Nashville, you know there's just a bunch of bars on that Broadway stretch, and you can just kind of hop to each one. You hear a lot of cover songs. You hear a lot of Nashville songs, stuff you can pretty much hear anywhere. But obviously these people are really good at it because they wouldn't be in Nashville otherwise. One thing you're not going to hear is a lot of original music. And this is on that stretch of Broadway where you have a lot of the well-known clubs. But anyway, one night we walked into a bar. I couldn't tell you which one it was. And there's a guy playing named Willie Heath Neal. He stood out to me because he did play a lot of original music, and he was really funny. You could kind of tell he had a look on his face like he didn't really want to be there. He knew he was a little bit better than playing a lot of these places, even though, like I said earlier, you do got to be pretty good to be playing that stretch of Broadway. But what's even funnier is about a year or so later, my wife, before we were even dating, did the same trip that we did and ended up seeing Willie Heath Neal on that same bar that we saw him at. We didn't know we were at the same place until years later when she whipped out a CD of his and put it on. And I said, oh my gosh, I think I saw that guy when I was in Nashville. So it's funny what love does to people and how it can connect and how it can just rekindle things that maybe you didn't know had happened. And I don't know what I meant by that, other than to say that here I am 20 years later, and I'm featuring Willie Heath Neal and his wife, Kira Annelise, in this episode of Four Songs. Now, their journey together is not unlike how I discovered Willie and my wife did too. Like I said, it was just sort of this cosmic thing where we were both at the same bar, not at the same time, but seeing the same band. In this case, Willie, as you know, had been playing Nashville for a while, had been in punk bands, country rock bands, and by the time he met Kira Annelise, he was pretty much done. He had moderate success, but was just kind of sick of the deal. And then, kind of an off-chance meeting one night, he played a gig, and Kira was in the audience, and she just fell instantly head over heels. Eventually, she met him, and then they started writing songs together. And, at the time, Willie had kind of run out of ideas, whereas Kira was just discovering how gifted of a songwriter and singer and guitar player she was. So, naturally, they started a band. They got together, started a duo called the Waymores. And just last month, the Waymores' second album, called The Stone Sessions, came out. It's on all streaming platforms. You can get it. Go check them out at thewaymores.com or Amazon or wherever you get your music these days. As you may have guessed, Willie, having been a veteran of Nashville, he loves country music, and The Stone Session is a country album, but it is old school country. It's Johnny Cash country. It's Waylon Jennings country. It's Hank Sr. country. We talk about 4 songs from The Stone Sessions: Even When, Batshit Crazy, Roll That Chain, and I Don't Like the Liquor. There is a bit of sadness in this because the producer of The Stone Sessions, Steve Stone, who's also their incredibly gifted steel guitar player, he passed after this album was made. A couple other things here. The internet connection gets a little spotty at times. Just stick with it. It works out. You might hear my dogs running around at some point. I had to do something with them, and they weren't going to just sit quietly. So what the hell? Dogs just bark. What am I going to do? The most important thing I want you to do is just to dig in, grab a beer, sit back and listen, and just enjoy a fun, hell of a conversation with Willie Heath Neal and Kira Annelise. Please welcome the Waymores to 4 Songs.
Great to
Thanks
be here.
for having us.
So we're 2 years in this pandemic, and that's when I started doing this podcast. So what's life been like for you all for the last couple of years?
Well, when the pandemic hit, like before the pandemic hit, we were set to step foot on a plane like 2 days after everything went down. Obviously, everything got canceled. The world got canceled. We were regularly touring about 200 days a year. We were on our way to the UK tour. That's what I was trying to say. So it was really heavy for us at first. It was really hard to imagine a life outside of being a touring act, being at home all the time and really not knowing what to do with ourselves. But in hindsight, it's been kind of a blessing just the time at home, not Corona.
Yeah.
It's been a blessing because it gave us the opportunity to be artists again, which you didn't get a lot of while being on the road. The dogs are adorable. You don't get a lot of that opportunity while you're touring and while you're on the stage to create and make music together. So it was really kind of a blessing in that regard.
So we made an album during the pandemic, and as it started to, get less and less intense. And we've been getting back to right before October last year, she had to have vocal cord surgery. We were going pretty hard and heavy. And then we had to take 3 months. We had to take 3 months off for her to recover. But we've come back, it's been a slow build back, but we feel almost back to normal. Almost.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's getting there.
It's getting there.
So, I mean, it seems like you mentioned recording an album, and we'll be talking about that later on. And what was it like, though, when you first started recording during and writing, I guess, during the pandemic? I mean, did it just the isolation, did that affect you in any different way than what life would be like normally?
Yeah, there's a couple of songs on the album that are about just that, just about missing different things on the road, like that you didn't think you would miss, like a traffic jam and things like that. So there's definitely some references in this album to how we felt, but it's more so things. So like before the pandemic hit, we would have like little notes in our phone about like this line here or a verse here or a chorus here. So we kind of hit some of those and finished writing them. And then we would also just drink on our front porch and be silly and write some just based on that. So it was kind of an amalgamation of a bunch of things.
Yeah. And we thought we would just go in and record one song. We knew that we could do everything remotely. So we thought we would just do one song, and we thought, it would take a lot longer than it did, and that we would do that just to have something to do to occupy our minds during the lockdown, because, everybody could track from home and send it in. But it was so easy to do that one song after we recorded it. We thought now was the absolute perfect time. We've got a system down now to make a record remotely because everybody just did it for this one track. So let's go ahead and take the plunge and start making another record. So it wouldn't have been coming out right now, probably, if the lockdown hadn't happened and forced us to write it and make it. It was like the world just said, you have to stop and be an artist now. Even though it's a lot more sinister than that, that's kind of how we've internalized it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because some people I was talking to early on were just saying the way when everything first started to hit, it changed how they processed information and just ideas, because
that's true.
Not having a normal lifestyle.
Yeah.
That is very true. It was hard. I think harder at first and easier as time went on, as most things are, where you kind of just accepted your fate a little bit. Like at first we were told it was 2 weeks and then 2 more weeks and then 6 weeks. And then, so you kind of just got used to this is how we're going to live now. So then when the time came that places started to open up a little bit, we were just so thrilled for the opportunity to be back at what we were doing and what we love.
Well, that was kind of what I wanted to get into a little bit is, your new album, The Stone Sessions, which comes out in April, is pretty steeped in country, but I know you've been doing all different types of music, from punk to alt country, rockabilly to what have you. So in terms of just both you, Willie, and you, Kira, just in terms of writing, like who have been among your most influential songwriters, and then I guess even going before that, like what got you into this in the first place?
You want to talk about some of our influences and I'll talk about technique, or do you want to switch that?
Oh, you go ahead. You talk about technique.
Well, talk about
us together. I know that we're obviously, with the name the Waymores, we're big Waylon Jennings fans. But at our live show, like the most covered artist is probably John Prine. We both are pretty obsessed with John Prine's writing, which hopefully the people that listen to Stone Sessions can hear. Townes Van Zandt, he's one of the most prolific songwriters to have ever lived, in our opinion. I got a lot of my songwriting influence and inspiration from Willie. I didn't write songs before I met Willie. I didn't know how to play a guitar before I met Willie. Wow. I was a singer in a little band.
She fell for my evil plan.
I was just singing in a band, doing cover songs, and I met him and just fell in love right away. And I had to have it. I had to have him and the music and the life and all of it. here we are 14 years later.
And so those are, we channel some of those influences, when we're writing, but there are several aspects or rules, or not rules, that we engage by. One of them is we have this kind of belief that you don't really write them. You're kind of just an antenna and you receive the songs. The songs are just all over the place in the universe, the life you lived conditions your antenna to receive a certain kind of song. So, I had, as a career before Kira and I met. And in fact, I was full throttle at it when Kira and I first met, but I always prided myself on being a songwriter. Man, they came at me just like nonstop, or in my early days. But right around when I met Kira and she started writing, and my antenna was broken. My song well had dried up. I hadn't written a good song, and I would do things that were breaking my cardinal rule, like don't be contrived, just receive the song. It's like, I'm going to write a song about this, and that's not how I work, So I was like, I just couldn't write. I was done. I was so aggravated by it. And she was at a point in her life where they were just flowing out of her. She would be like, I wrote this song. She was just learning. She learned 3 chords on the guitar, then would come back with like 5 songs that all kicked ass, and they were all brilliant. Then I would say something like, okay, when I tried to write a song with only 2 chords in it, she'd come back with 5 more songs, just they were all brilliant. And so finally got to the point where she's like, hey, I wrote another song. Do you want to hear it? I'm like, no, I don't want to hear another damn brilliant song you wrote. I haven't written a song in 3 years. I don't, so but then one day this weird thing happened where Kira said, hey, I've got this song I wrote today. Check it out. This song is matches, by the way. She's like, I've got these great lyrics, verses, but I don't any idea what to do for a chorus. And so she played it, and I was like, dang, I have this chorus I've been carrying around in my head for 20 years. I had, how to play it. I had it. It's like I've never been able to find a song for it to go into, because I don't believe in forcing that crap in, it's never worked with anything. And it's a great chorus. The chorus itself would have made a song, but I still didn't want to put it with just a bunch of crappy verses, a catchy chorus, I wanted. So when she showed me the verses she had written for matches, I was like, oh my God, I've got a chorus that I've been carrying around for 20 years that'll go in there perfectly.
Well, I guess kind of going back even deeper though, like what was the moment when you realized, both of you, that, I guess, Kira, it sounds like you learned to write songs after being with Willie, but Willie, like when did the light bulb go off for you that this is what I want to do?
That's a great question, man. So check it out. Yeah. I'll wake you up when I'm done, babe. Well, man, the funny thing about this is, for me, I'm an artist on a lot of levels. I draw and I do a little bit of, painting. I was an illustrator before I started my music career. But anytime I created art in that realm, it never gave me like any kind of closure, like any kind of personal insight or anything. It wasn't until I wrote a song and put it to music that like a calmness came over me. Like I imagine an artist who's a great painter, looks at the painting when he's done and sees all these things about himself, and that painting gives him some kind of closure. When I wrote a song, I was like, man, that's exactly how I feel. And I could never say those words just speaking them, but when I put a guitar in my hand and put a melody behind it, I was like, so it changed me, saved me. I mean, fixed a lot of things with me. It was the first of all my artistic capacities. Songwriting is the only spiritual one. It's the only one that.
When was that?
That's a great question.
I'm taking it over now.
That was after my stint. So that would be late 90s. I had written a couple of songs in punk rock bands, but they never gave me that feeling of when I wrote my first country song. I finished a song that my mother had started writing before she passed. I took her lyrics and turned it around a little bit, but put a chorus to it. And that was one of the most fulfilling things I had ever done. I
didn't know that.
That's when I realized that I'm a songwriter. It's in me, I know. And then shortly after that, once I tapped that, they started just coming out of me like they were you when I met you, so you can understand that. I was like, oh my God. And that sense of, I really created something here. And then when you put that on a record or somewhere and then go play a show and people are singing that song back to you,
that's like the best.
It's a lot better than people standing around screaming at a painting you did.
For sure.
That feeling was just something, no drug, no any kind of euphoria, no anything has ever given me, and I'm sure she can relate to that feeling. Back to you, Kira.
I wrote a song about Willie
Yeah.
And I was married at the time, so I had to hide his name in the title. So the title was We Had Nothing, and it was WHN, Willie Heath Neal. Clever.
And then she wrote my name on her notebook.
And then I wrote Kira Neal and drew hearts all around it. So it was really about, for me, it was just kind of learning the process. Like I hadn't even really heard real country music before I met Willie. When that one time when I first met him and fell immediately head over heels, he was playing Junior Brown's Hung It Up on stage with his full band. I still remember all of this. And funny. So when I heard that, I was like, holy moly, that is quite a song. So I just went home and started researching everything. And so when I learned 3 chords, so when I went back the next week, he was there playing music, and I would watch his hands. And I learned 3 chords. I learned G, C, and D that night. And I went home and I stayed up all night long and I wrote that first song with 3 chords. It was life changing. And then like right out of the gate, I was like, I have to write 30 more.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, so speaking of still doing it, we'll talk about the Stone Sessions, which was written and recorded during the pandemic. And so we'll talk a little bit about each song and how maybe the pandemic kind of crept in. But what's great about it is that, you know, we've kind of hit that point where there are albums coming out that were written and recorded, but this doesn't sound like a pandemic project. And, you know, it sounds has that old time, that feel that like this is timeless. And how did, like, but that has to be hard to do in an unprecedented kind of environment. So how did you do that?
Well, so one of our rules before I turn the microphone over to Kira.
Oh my God, I'm going to get to talk.
Well, no. So even like when some of these songs were coming about and we would put lines in them that would be like, that's too specific. We need you to have the feel of it being in the pandemic, but we're not going to make a novelty song by actually mentioning that. We've got one great song, Quarantine, that is so great, but it's like, it's just a novelty thing. And we don't do that. So we went out of our way to make sure it's like, hey, we need to rephrase this. So it leaves a little bit to the imagination. It's like, if you've been through the pandemic, you knew what it was talking about, but we want it to be timeless. We don't want, when we're dead and gone, somebody hears that song is like, what was this pandemic they're talking about? And
I think we do that with all of our songs, regardless of what's going on in the world. So for instance, even when I first started writing it, it was very specifically about one circumstance and one person. And then I think I was only like a few lines in when I was like, hey, Willie, listen to this. He brought his insight into it because it talks about letting go of people that just aren't really worth missing.
I don't miss none of my friends that left me high and dry back then. If you're sitting home just wondering, I don't miss you even when walking alone in the cold, cold wind. Those old memories rushing in, the cold cuts deep just like a long lost friend. I don't miss you even when I see your photos in an old shoebox, keeping track of everything I've lost, trying hard to hold on to what I've got. It ain't a lie, it's not a lie.
And so you might be sitting around thinking like, man, I miss that person. But really, in reality, you miss like the times you had or this. It's still a relevant reason why that relationship is no longer in your life. So he brought that kind of insight into the songwriting process. And so we shifted it a bit and made it where it can be relatable by anybody, not just this one person that knows this person that annoyed the crap out of me. Anybody that has ever had a relationship that went wrong, but that person still means something to you, can relate to this song. So we did that kind of thing with every song on the album ish. There's still a couple that I've already had one be called Novelty by a critic. So it's there, it's fluid throughout, but we do get, sometimes it's just worth being specific.
Yeah, sometimes, songs are specific if you're talking about, like it's a story song with one person that, Johnny went through this. Johnny took his guns to town and this happened to Johnny. But, like when we were writing Even When, it was easy to start making it about this one person, right? Even if you try to make it a little vague, it's like, there's so much more you can do with that if you make it more ambiguous. And because a big part of art is subjective, right? So you paint your story around the lyrics and melody to this song. And if you take away too much of that and make it about a specific person, it takes a lot of your self-imagination out of the song, right? So the beautiful part about art is that you can look at it and it's all about you. That's what heals you with it, right?
Yeah. So, but even when this kind of starts out with like a Dolly Parton with that beginning, the drum beat, and then your voice, Kira. Was that?
I love that.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely.
Sometimes I don't know if I'm like way off base with some of these things. So it just had to remind me.
I love that reference.
Okay. Yeah, because so I guess using that kind of going into more detail. I mean, I like the lyrics are pretty clever, and it's funny how it just seems like even though we're trying to say I don't really miss you, but I kind of miss you.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going through at the time, and what made me start writing it was I really don't want to miss this person. Why do I still miss this person? So that's kind of where that, all rooted from. And like I said, Willie came in and kind of gave his perspective, a bit like, oh, well, I've had this instance happen to me that's really similar. So I would say this about it. And, or I remember we wrote it in here in this is our bedroom here that we're in. Usually in the writing process, and it happened in this one, he writes his verses and I write mine. And then we kind of come together on the chorus, and then we'll, get judgy with each other's verses. And
we'll do the word volley, like, the better word for that is this. Nope, this, all right, we agree on that.
Yeah. So that's kind of how Even When came to be.
So when you were putting this together, was this like you wrote it, the music and the lyrics at the same time, or did you kind of both you had the music set, or how did that?
Yeah,
it was both for this one, it was both at the same time.
Yeah. Our writing process, I'm just having this realization here as we speak live. So we write a lot with, vocal melody. So that's why, so when we start writing lyrics, we start putting a melody to the lyrics, and we kind of just play that on guitar, very seldom, but we do at times, we'll try to put a different melody over a different chord melody, but that's very hard to do for how I write. I'm a very melodic person. But so a lot of times, the melody of the song, people always ask, did you write the music or the words first? I'm like, well, how we write is kind of at the same time, because
push them together.
We put a melody together to the lyrics as we start and just play that progression on the guitar,
So in terms of the music, and what I also love the pedal steel. I understand that Steve Stone was your producer, and he plays a lot of that. Did he do the pedal steel for this one?
He did steel on every track. Yeah.
His input was very beautiful what he did.
He was incredible to us, and unfortunately it was there that we found out about his cancer, because I had vocal nodules throughout the entire recording process of Stone sessions, and so we would skip ahead on some tracks and record vocals that really shouldn't have been placed there right off the gate, but it was because I knew I only had so long to record them. So before surgery. So Steve thought that he had them too. And he was like, oh, I'm having this kind of pain. I was like, yeah, that sounds really similar. And I sent him to my otolaryngologist, and they scoped him and just riddled up one side and down the other with cancer. And we were really hoping that Steve would make it to the street date on Friday, but he passed away about a month ago. And one thing that will live forever, rent free in our minds, is that his family told us he died thinking that this album was going to take us to the top, that all of us would just hit the big time for it. Yeah. And regardless of how things turn out, we're just thrilled that was in his head. And, it's going to live on as being in the big time for us, because Steve felt it.
Yeah.
You said that we were going to discuss Batshit Crazy anyway, right?
Yeah. We can do that. Yeah. Next. And Yeah, I love that. It's a fun one. And I'm first sorry to hear about Steve's passing. So I don't want
Thank you very much. Sorry that we interrupted that one.
So batshit crazy, and this is a fun one. And
Yeah. So have you ever seen, are you on social medias like Facebook and stuff?
yeah.
Okay. Well, on my feed, there's a lot of folks that every other week or so, or every month or so, they meet the newest love of their lives. And they're like, oh, this is the love. He's the one. She's the one. Oh, we're going to get married. And then all of a sudden it's over. And the following week they meet the new love of their life. And it's always the one. So batshit crazy is kind of about those people.
It's too early to tell you that I'm crazy, so I'll take it for a week or two. It's too early to tell me you got trouble staying true. So for the next 2 weeks, you'll be my world, and I'll tell everyone I can. For the third week, for the fourth time this month, I'll find another man. Because I'm crazy, batshit crazy. Lord, I'm crazy, but I'll always love
That was a fun one to write.
It really was.
We were really channeling some John Prine. We were writing this about the time John Prine passed,
Oh, really? I don't
Yeah.
think I realized that.
Yeah,
At the time. Yeah.
which was so devastating to us to be. Had we been able to go out and play, we probably could have dealt with that easier because
Yeah.
you mourn your loss of your songwriting heroes by singing their songs.
Yeah.
But
wrote
we
Batshit Crazy
channeled
instead.
the whole, pictures of us kissing,
I've got
dancing
pictures of
barefoot,
us
kissing,
kissing,
dancing
yeah.
barefoot in the kitchen. I was like, that is so John Prine.
I got pictures of us kissing, dancing barefoot in the kitchen Tuesday night. By Thursday in that same kitchen, I'll cut you with a knife. You never answer the phone when you're supposed to be alone, so who you with? And you never call me back, and you wonder why I'm acting like a bitch. Because I'm crazy, batshit crazy. Lord, I'm crazy, but I'll always love you, baby.
We were on the front porch writing that one with our dogs. We did a lot of front porch sitting and front porch drinking during the
Yeah.
quarantine. But batshit crazy came about then, and it's got one of our favorite
I
solos
was just thinking
on the
that.
entire
Yeah.
album.
Steve does this little
It's like an echo.
shout and response thing.
Yeah.
He'll and that's
That's really good.
yeah, but it's like a shout and response thing,
Mhm.
That's one of my favorite solos on the whole record.
Lord, I'm crazy, but I'll always love you, baby.
Yeah, it is my favorite solo on the whole record. And it seems so calm and almost unfitting at first for the lyrics. But I love that contrast of like, it's like potty mouth central,
Yeah.
the song is. And, we say all the bad words. It's talking about this, crazy relationship and somebody getting stabbed in the kitchen. And
Yeah, because we know people like that.
yeah, all of these like kind of crazy moments. And it has this stunning steel solo that's just so soft and
Yeah.
melodic and just
Yeah,
I mean,
just
it's
beautiful.
just beautiful.
It's
and
not
it's so unfitting, but it fits perfectly in the song.
And another beautiful thing about Steve Stone is it's the only, everything else in the song is kind of manic,
Mhm.
kind of panicky, kind of aggressive. Steve's solo is the only calm thing
Yeah.
in it,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
really works. It really brings it back down, brings the mood back down after all of that, kind of calms you down, then comes right back in with more crazy.
So Roll That Chain. And we were talking about this earlier when I got the name wrong, about it reminding me of an Elvis song, Mystery Train.
Wow, that's great.
It's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the chug, chug, chugging, the drumming, I think, and it just has that, even though it's not structured the same way, but I think just the Roll That Chain, the repeating of that and the background vocals, I think do add that element to it. So how did this one come to you? And
I'm gonna blow it here, but Steve Stone wrote this song.
okay.
Yeah, and he really, really wanted us to cover it, and we needed a track that Willie sang
lead on. Just
and
me.
it was very. If you've listened to Willie's stuff before the Waymores, this is a very Willie Heath Neal song, so it was very fitting. And I got to be all hillbilly gospel in the background.
We went a lot more gospel with it than Steve Stone's demo of it.
Yeah, his original was not as gospel as we made it.
Yeah.
But we both just loved it. And I wasn't huge in the recording process of this. I literally just came in and did so we'll go back to you, Neal.
Yeah. Yeah, you did. Well, first, her backup vocal wasn't supposed to be so prominent, but as we got to recording, because her voice is just incredible, we were just like, man, I need you to be Aretha Franklin back there, just, in church, just pounding this thing out.
Well, I tell you, it's a crying shame when dreams go swirling down the drain. How one man has a worthy goal while the next man can't get shit to grow. Roll that chain, roll that chain, roll that chain, roll that chain. Let's see some Action Jackson talk as cheap as lame. Roll that chain, roll that chain, roll that chain, roll that chain. Just get that anchor back on board and head for open sea. Roll that chain.
And she did. And that made it sound more like a Waymore song too. It's like, let's bring her, I want her vocal to be more dominant, because we did several, to give it that gospel feel, we did several vocal takes, to make it sound like big and full back there. But I was like, you got to bring Kira up more. It, makes it sound more like a Waymore song. And I think she outshines me with all her. Woo, woo, woo,
I do
woo.
not. You do. You got that Roll That Chain.
But Steve wrote the song and had a little demo of it that he had done himself. And it was just kind of straight up psychobilly thing. But the lyrics are great, even though Roll That Chain is not by any means any kind of real nautical term. It's one he made up, but still, I got it. It's like, it's still good, man.
Well, here's a hanky just in case. Roll that chain. What I tell you, irrigate your face. Roll that chain. The key to life is accepting change. Roll that chain. And fear will only bring you pain. Roll that chain. Roll that chain. Roll that chain. Roll that chain. Let's see some Action Jackson talk as cheap as lame. Roll that chain. Roll that chain. Roll that chain. Roll that chain. Just get that anchor back on board and let's go do this thing. Roll that chain.
So we I added a turnaround, not really a turnaround in there, but a chord progression in one part of it that he didn't do. We made it a lot more gospel-like. Mm-hmm. And man, it was a lot of words to remember.
Yeah.
I remember like the weeks leading up to his vocal tracks. He was like, holy crap.
I'm just walking around. Yeah, I was like, what have I got myself into?
Yeah, it was tough, and I didn't have to do any of it.
Just throw yourself a fucking spine and get up early, stay up late. Get off your ass, do what it takes. Roll that chain, roll that chain, roll that chain. Let's see some Action Jackson talk as cheap as lame. Roll that chain, roll that chain, roll that chain, roll that chain. Just get that anchor back on board and let's go do this thing. Roll that chain. Roll that chain, 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 roll that chain.
Well, I want to thank you both so much for your time tonight. I've got one last song to chat about. That's I Don't Like the Liquor, and I understand this is written by a friend of yours, Anders Thompson. Is that? Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
Anders.
How did this one come to you? Because this has like a real Hank Senior version sound to it.
Yeah.
It's very so Anders Thompson and I go way back. Anders used to be in this band called the Ex-Husbands that were in the late 90s, early 2000s. Incredible country band.
Awesome band.
Their first album is still one of my favorite country records. But so Anders and I reconnected after a lot of years, and I would just follow him on social media. And he had just kind of retired to Tybee Island, hanging out there and playing music just around there. But he would do this thing where he sat in his truck and would just play some song he was writing. And he saw this video of him playing that song. He, you know, it was so good. I messaged him right away. I was like, is that a cover? Did you write it? And he went, I wrote it. And we were putting material together for this album. And I went, can we please cover it? But without even talking to Kira, I knew. I was like, this is a Waymores song.
You did what?
So he's like, by all means. So I ran straight home, showed Kira the video, and she was like, holy shit, that's a Waymores song.
I don't like the whiskey, but the whiskey likes me. He's always coming round, tugging on my sleeve, saying, "Wee, Daddy, take a drink of me."
I don't like tequila, but tequila likes me. She's always by my side, trying to hit you right, singing, "Ooh, mama, take a drink of me."
If I had just a nickel for every drink I ever drunk, I couldn't pack all that money into an old railroad.
And we took some liberty with the lyrics and made it more about our personal habits.
Yeah, we added the tequila line. Did we add the cocaine line?
Yeah, I was going to
Nope,
ask.
Okay,
no,
yeah.
and that's Anders. We
That was
had,
not one of our personal habits.
I think the only thing we added was the tequila.
Yeah.
Chopped it up into a duet. Did it pretty much like Anders did it. Well, it's so funny. We have a video for that song coming out on April the 9th.
Yep.
Anders, our lead player, couldn't make it that day, and Anders just happened to be in Atlanta,
Oh, wow.
just on some weird. They were
Yeah.
going to a concert
He
or
was
something
bringing his kid to a concert here in Atlanta, and
on the day of the video shoot.
we sweet talked him into staying an extra day.
Yeah, and he got to come be the guitar player in the video. It's a fun song, and it's a Waymores song all the way,
For sure.
you know. And what I love about us, our live show, is, man, we can play the slow, you know, heavy, tear-jerking country stuff, and then play that kind of tongue-in-cheek, you know, hey, good looking, what you got cooking kind of thing.
Cocaine, but the cocaine likes me. He's always coming round, tugging on my sleeve, singing, "Ooh, mama, take a sniff of me."
You know I love the reefer and the reefer loves me. We always get along and he never does me wrong. Saying, "Wee, Daddy, take a puff of me." And if I had just a nickel for every drink I ever drunk, I couldn't pack all that money into an old railroad.
Yeah, I mean, so when you dividing up the verses, how do you decide who sang what for the song?
Thought about it.
We didn't.
No, we didn't.
We didn't. That one was kind of easy because it started with the "I don't like the whiskey" line. So we kind of, I just had always pictured it with you starting it, and then we added the "I don't like tequila, but tequila likes me." So in most typical country songs, like country duets, it's a male start and then the female follows. We made an effort on this album to reverse that a couple of times.
You know, this is more thought than we've ever had to put into how that came about, because we just worked so well together with that. You know, it's just like, I'll do this.
And like,
Well, again, I want to thank you both for your time tonight. So the album's
Thank
coming
you.
out,
Thank you.
and where can folks get it? How can they keep up with you? It's the best
so
place.
it will be live on all streaming platforms on Friday, the 8th of April.
Webpage and stuff.
And yeah, so we're at thewaymores.com, but on any social media, well, let me rephrase that. On Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, we're at the Waymores. I'm sorry, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Yeah. And then on Twitter, we are at Waymores. And then thewaymores.com, you can see all of our tour dates. Follow us on Spotify, and our tour dates are also listed there. And I think there's like a merch special, something on Spotify as well that our label did.
All right. Well, cool. Well, thank you again. I want to thank Willie and Kira for giving me so much of their time and for being so disarmingly funny and honest and, well, just being cool. I don't know how else to put it, because that was a hell of an interview. I hope to one day get to see them live here in DC, or maybe next time I'm in Nashville, or actually they're based down in Atlanta. So maybe the next time I'm in Atlanta, which I don't know when that'll be. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Go check them out at thewaymores.com. Go get a copy of the Stone Sessions on Spotify or Pandora or however you get music these days. And if you're so inclined, try to pick up a physical copy. Get the CD or the LP, because the music just sounds that much better. It is so much more worth it. The artists get more out of it. You get more out of it. Anyway, try and do that if you can. Stay tuned. I got more coming. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you later.